Hey, I'm Guy.
I'm John.
It's our YouTube channel. Subscribe to it. Give this video a like.
Podcast down in the description. Subscribe to that as well. Kyle Juszczyk, 5-time Pro Bowler, was on last Friday.
Yes, he was. This is from Mike Reese of ESPN. He wrote about Marcus Mariota. A couple of things of note. With the projected cost to acquire him, a late-round pick, and his salary about $10.6 million being reasonable, New England would have the flexibility to add another quarterback should the opportunity present itself later in the offseason, like Garoppolo or a draft pick. Then he finishes with, keep in mind he covers the Patriots, I'm warming up to the idea of Mariota as a strong plan B if Garoppolo isn't available. So part of the reason he writes this, you go catch up on what they're writing about the Patriots, is there is this Garoppolo conversation that's happening there, which of course it is because the Niners are in this whole other conversation about replacing him. And he does seem like an obvious replacement for Bill, but the Niners would have to move him. And there is this whole other thing that I've been thinking about the last couple of weeks, just in the back of my mind. Maybe we could talk about as the offseason goes along. Is like you do have to be okay with the possibility that he looks great playing for Bill Belichick and goes to the playoffs. But that's a whole other thing. This is about Mariota. What do you think of that? The possibility of Mariota being there's a few kind of tangents here. A late round pick and a good option for the Patriots.
I think there are some parallels with Jimmy and Mariota, like a guy that battled some injuries, a guy that had success, a guy that won a playoff game. He actually did more in the playoff game than Jimmy did in either of his playoff games, not counting the Super Bowl. I think the best thing Mariota has going for him is his contract. So you immediately get a guy that only costs $10 million against your cap, who can start games, who started a bunch, and doesn't derail you from drafting a quarterback because you might give up a 5th round pick. So if I give up a 5th round pick, if I'm Washington, I go, he's better than anything we got. We signed Heineke to like $8.25 million. It was $500 guaranteed. So they basically we like Heineke, and as one of those that we don't want to let him hit RFA, but they didn't. $500,000 in the NFL isn't that much money. You could even keep 3 quarterbacks or have Heineke and Mariota and go, maybe we go into the draft. If we can get up, maybe we can't. The Patriots do not have a quarterback. The Bears do not have a quarterback. I actually think Mariota is an easier guy to trade for than Jimmy Garoppolo, just because he makes way less money. Because I don't think you're counting on either guy to carry your team. I think they're both kind of similar, and one guy runs around. You could argue right now, if I was a team, now the Patriots are unique because they have the guy that drafted them and the offensive coordinator who was around him and played a game with them, or those 2 games, right, when Tom got suspended. So I understand that, and their shit's complex there. But all these other teams, if you got into a pinch, would I rather have for a 5th round pick a guy that makes less money and who's just kind of more I'd rather have Mariota than Jimmy Garoppolo. Jimmy Garoppolo gets hurt all the time. Maybe so does Mariota, but not actually. He's pretty healthy this year. I guess he did get hurt in training camp.
Yeah, he was slow to start the season, right, because of an injury. But was he recovering from a surgery?
He was hurt when they signed him, remember? Yeah. And then I do think he got kind of banged up. Remember there was a stretch where Peterman was the backup. It was kind of weird there for a couple of weeks. He had a bad training camp, but it was part of health. Because clearly when he played late in the season and he was the quote-unquote backup, he was healthy, right? He was a healthy player.
Yeah. I don't think this year makes it murkier for me because Garoppolo in a game and a half, basically, less than a game and a half, looked pretty bad when he was healthy. I do think
borderline awful.
It was really alarming. This is not just. I mean, this is largely an injury conversation that we've had with him over the last several months, but it's not just that. It's easy to forget there was a whole conversation about whether he's good enough happening, and then he got hurt. The money really matters. We're talking about more than half as much. My bet right now is that Marcus Mariota is not as good as Jimmy Garoppolo. But again, Jimmy looked so bad at the beginning of the year that I don't feel real comfortable saying that. I don't think Marcus Mariota is like a top, what would be the number, 25 NFL starter, 20 NFL, maybe 25. Maybe 20 is the number I would put.
I'd say he's better than 25.
Yeah,
20.
I'll make it top 20. I think he's an okay fallback option. To me, if Bill Belichick goes into the year with Marcus Mariota as a starting quarterback, part of me is going to wonder, is he really going to pull this
Marcus Mariota's
off?
made the playoffs before as a starting quarterback.
I know.
That's happened on the Titans.
And he might be able to make the playoffs for Bill, but Bill's standard is win the Super Bowl. Like, is Bill going to go 2 years without really finding a true replacement for Brady? Because Mariota ain't it.
I do think, forever it was like the only people that could bitch and moan about not winning a national championship or not winning the Super Bowl was the Patriots and Alabama. The Patriots no longer get to be like, our goal is to win the Super Bowl. Like, their goal now is to get back to the playoffs.
Yeah, but they've like is Bill, who to me probably
but he doesn't have any options, guy. He's fucked.
I don't know. Do something dramatic. I just
who where
to draft a quarterback. I just think.
But what if he doesn't like any of those guys?
Yeah, well, I don't know, man. They're in a bad. To me, this is not the answer, but you're right. It might be the placeholder. I don't think it's the long-term answer for them, but I don't know that anyone's arguing that it is. I don't know that I'm not. I don't think Jimmy necessarily would be.
No,
I look at Bill though. Like Bill, I think because who did I see? Oh, Ty Dunn. He tweeted out the Deshaun article the other day that we made a video about, and then one of the things in that article he wrote was that there are some people that around the Texans organization think that David Culley, the head coach they hired, is a placeholder until Josh McDaniels' contract is up in 2 years in New England, and they're going to hire Josh. And what I replied to him, and I said, to me, Bill's going to retire in 2 years and hand it over to Josh. Josh hasn't sat in New England this long to go take over the Texans' job because Nick Casario's there, and they don't have a quarterback, and they're a bad organization to go work for what's his face. So I don't like
my take was they were gonna that he was the placeholder till Josh McCown took over.
To Josh McCown. Yeah. To me, McDaniels is. I think Bill's got a couple years left.
Where I'd push back on that a little bit though, forever, I'd say when the Niners hired Kyle, right, from like 15 to like 17 or maybe 18, whenever he turned down Indianapolis, he was viewed as like, okay, he's done his rehab. He did his Dan Pompei article. He takes notes about why he was a shitty guy. And he felt like, God, Josh, like if Josh wanted to go grab a burger and beer, like that article made him feel like, this guy's pretty cool. He's kind of like figured it out. But once he did the Indy thing, I feel like everyone's off him. The Eagles chose Nick Sirianni over Josh McDaniels. If the Eagles had offered Josh McDaniels the job, he would have accepted it, I was told. The final two was Nick Sirianni, Josh McDaniels. And you can say they went with Nick Sirianni for different reasons, but Josh McDaniels was there. Like, he would have become a head coach. I don't think people – so this is back to my Texans. I wonder if he starts thinking, like, I'm not going to get another job. And we see how coach in waiting goes sometimes, right? Remember it happened with Muschamp? That was the first time I've ever heard of it. Muschamp, Mac Brown. And you realize, like, is Mac really going to walk away anytime soon? He just bounced. Remember he went to, like, Florida? Because, like, I don't know when he's going to retire. And, Texas or Florida. But Florida was like, hey, you want to be our head coach? He's like, yeah. And I think it's easy. A lot of people are like, shouldn't he just take over for Belichick? Well, yeah. But does it feel like Belichick just anytime soon is going to be like, see ya?
I think he retires in a couple of years, especially if he's coaching 4 years without a quarterback. Yeah,
you'd think, but these guys are addicted, man. He's got nothing else.
I know.
Have hobbies.
I believe me. I know. I'm just.
And he's not going to do TV, so it'd be one of those things like if you told me McVay in 10 years walks away for like 5 years, burnt out, and then goes to TV and then makes a comeback, I'd understand. Bill has nothing else to do. Doesn't play golf. Goes to Nantucket, but fuck, he can go. The great part about being as Bill Belichick, he can go to Nantucket like every other weekend now, right? I mean, he can do whatever he wants. I'm with you. I don't think he just wants to be part of something shitty, but he views it like, I'll fix it.
Well, I do think he wants to fix it. Because one thing I heard Michael Rosenberg, the SI writer who we always like, he writes like the big piece. Was it with Russillo or Simmons he was on? And I think it was Simmons.
It was Wickersham.
Was it Wickersham?
Yeah, because Wickersham was talking about how Bill didn't want to leave the place shitty.
Yeah, how he didn't want to coach past 70. Wickersham's writing a book.
I don't. He didn't say that. Wickersham's deal was.
Whoever was so Wickersham must be writing a book about Bill and the Patriots. Whoever was on was talking about writing a book.
Yeah, I was just the part I heard was him saying one thing he's always told people: he does not want to leave it in a bad spot.
Yeah, yep. So that's the same conversation, and he didn't want to coach past 70, is what he's claimed. So
he's 69.
60. Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. Like I don't know, but that's a separate issue.
But like last year, part of the Mariota conference or Jimmy or whoever, you just need a guy to get you the season if you don't have anyone.
No, I know you do.
Not everyone can have fucking Mahomes, right?
Who?
Mahomes.
Oh, I was like, who is Matt Holmes?
But eventually, like Jimmy Garoppolo and Mariota are going to be starting quarterbacks for people come week 1. Is going to be obviously not in the Mariota, no chance the team he's on. I guess no chance, but very slim. And Jimmy, who knows? But like those guys are starting just because there are only so many spots, and you see eventually like the Heinekes have a chance.
Right.
There's only so many slots at the table here.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I does Mariota being on the does Mariota being on the Patriots, the second he signs a contract with the Patriots or gets traded to the Patriots, I should say, does that mean Jimmy Garoppolo, the Niners have one less place to send him?
Yes. But that also means then Washington might not have a quarterback or Chicago might not have a quarterback, right?
Yeah. The Colts.
The Texans might end up needing a quarterback. Who knows?
Could Jimmy Garoppolo play for the Colts? Like, wouldn't shock me, actually.
Like, wouldn't you say if the Texans do trade Deshaun Watson and don't get back a Sam Darnold, don't get back a Tua, they do need someone to play quarterback for them. Like, you could just potentially trade him there for like a 5th and just get rid of him if you don't need him come the draft, right?
Yeah.
If you don't get Deshaun Watson. Which I've been told, and the rumors are out there, they want Deshaun Watson, obviously. I'm just torn on it a little bit. Like, you got to tell me the price. I'm just not I'm trading 4 picks for Deshaun Watson because part of me is like, Kyle, you should be able to get like Justin Fields to be 90% of them.
Right,
or whatever.
right. I did a poll the other day that said we talked about on the podcast, right? If the Patriots had acquired like the last 2 1s and the last 2 2s for the Bucs for Tom Brady, would the Bucs have still won the Super Bowl?
But you write out their names.
Yeah, right. Devin White, Tristan Wirfs, Vita Vea. I don't think did I say Vita? I said Dante. I said the corner.
Winfield, the safety.
And then Derek Papa, our old producer, was like, "Well, this is crazy because 2 of those guys got drafted after they got Tom." I'm like, "All right, well, pretend they were the picks and not the individual players." Right.
But that's the point.
Yeah, but the point is,
the picks don't have names. You wouldn't have those picks.
Right. Exactly. But so then you have a conversation like, yeah, but if without Tom, those guys wouldn't have won the Super Bowl. It's like, yeah, that's the point. Is you need the whole thing. And this goes back. You and I have talked about this for years, and I've always had this take. Championship coaches, you know who they have usually? The best players are on their teams. So when we talk about, well, Phil Jackson had Michael, that's why he won all those titles. Yeah. And John Wooden had the greatest college players, and Red Auerbach had the greatest NBA players, and Bill Walsh had the greatest quarterback.
But to me, part of it is like their ability is identifying it, drafting them, and then cultivating it in their – like part of Belichick is like, did he have the best players? Well, he drafted Brady. He drafted Gronk. He drafted Richard Seymour. He started drafting all these motherfuckers. McCourty's, Edelman. Like, you draft them. And the Niners, like, they have done that on a couple guys. The Raiders, I think, are kind of in a looser spot. They don't have as many impact players. But to be a great coach, you need to find the guys in the draft that you liked, and then not just obviously a quarterback, but even some of these other positions, and then they get better under your watch. Like, that's part of the deal. Like, part of why are the Steelers so good? Well, I don't know. They drafted T.J. Watt in the 20s, and then he looks like 90% of his fucking brother, right? They drafted AB in the 6th. They just start going through it doesn't look like, they traded for 17 guys. No, they draft them. That's part of the deal.
Right. But in the context of the Deshaun conversation, it's like, well, if you have to trade your best players for him, and it's a lot of them, how are you winning the Super Bowl with that team that's been gutted?
It's so much easier to do in the NBA. Like, yeah, I'll trade you. What do you guys want for Harden? As long as it doesn't include Kevin Durant or Kyrie, we'll give you whatever you want. In the NFL, it doesn't really work like that because draft picks, adding the ones, are such a big issue with it, or such a big part of like your addition to staying great. It's really kind of unique the way the Rams have done it, and you'd say really one of their picks became the greatest player maybe ever. I mean, it's just that to me has a huge factor. Like, how did the Rams really pull it off? Well, they arguably had the best player ever, non-quarterback.
Yeah,
like that's potentially what they got.
Right.
Like part of like how, you look back at like those Parcells teams, you're like, how many Hall of Famers they have? Well, they just had this Lawrence Taylor, but they say he was, Lawrence Taylor until like Aaron Donald and Reggie White came around was like the best player ever non-quarterback. When you have that guy, I do think it skews the way, like, well, it built through the. No, this guy wrecks shit all fucking game, every game, and you're going to get a double-digit wins.
Great plan by them to really put that together, though. That's the blueprint, John. That's what you try to repeat.
So, yeah, if you can get one of the greatest players ever, then I'll trade some ones.
By the way, on Mariota, it sounds like, we've talked about what you're going to get. I've said I think we agreed no better than a fourth. Feels like maybe a fifth feels too cheap because when I'm sending him to you, I know you're taking him to be your starting quarterback, right? I know,
but you don't though.
Okay, so what do you mean I don't?
Because I could start a rookie, he still might be.
Yeah, you could. But to me, part of the value of Marcus Mariota, even though I don't think he's necessarily worth a fourth, is that I know the team acquiring him probably needs him. Yeah, you're right. You could be a team that just want him for cheap security.
I'll be Washington football team. John, Mike. Mike, I know you have to ask John before you say yes. We'll give you our fifth.
I say Washington football team. Where else you getting a quarterback? No, 4th round pick. That's what it costs.
Okay, keep him. You'll have $35 million on the book.
Yeah, but okay, well, sure. Then we can wait a week and see if you guys are still desperate. What other quarterback are they going to get?
But I know you have to get rid of him, and I don't.
No, I mean, of course, there's a scenario where you end up with a fifth, but there's also a scenario where you're desperate, you don't have anything, and here's Marcus Mariota who can start for you. Only going to cost $10 million. Now maybe we do a 4th round swap.
What I think would be fair is I give you the fifth, and if he starts and we come to a deal, if he's, one of those conditions, right? If he's my starter for over half the games, like over 8 games, then I think it bumps up to a 4th next year.
I always think those trades are so weird.
But I think that's fair because
it's pretty fair.
What's your leverage? You're not giving me Deshaun Watson here. This guy, there's a chance he doesn't start a fucking game for me. And I'm helping you out by taking money off the books. I know you don't want that $10 million.
Yeah, I mean that's where they lose leverage. Again, I don't think he's worth a 4th, but I also think they got to know if you're acquiring him that if Bill Belichick calls on Marcus Mariota, I mean I know he's starting for you.
If I was the Washington football team, I would trade a 4th for him just because I actually think they'd be pretty good if he's just solid.
Yeah, and I said pick swap, but their pick's better than the Raiders, so they wouldn't swap. I mean, they made the playoffs, so the Raiders' pick is better. So it doesn't. In my head, they had That's the other thing is this is not Washington with the 5th pick of the 4th round. It's
they better
back end.
Even though they didn't win as many games.
I know. Actually, is it like one? I got to look at the draft order. It's like 1 or 2 spots different, I think, isn't it?
Well, yeah, because they were by far the worst record in the playoffs, and since they lose in the first round, they are the first pick of all the playoff teams. What is it, 20 or 21?
Right. If they're at 19, and the Raiders are at 17. Yeah.
So what happened, right, is forever the playoff teams started at 21, but when you add 2 playoff teams, it goes 19 and 20 are now playoff slots, right?
18 and 19 because oh yeah, you're right. 19 and 20. Sorry.
Who's 20?
Chicago.
Yeah. So I mean, both those teams. Let's face it. I mean, Chicago shouldn't have been a playoff team, and in Washington, it's just that happens every once in a while. The bad division gets in the playoffs.
Yeah.